Wow, I have had lots of guests on here, but
Yeah,
none who have ever known me as long as you.
yeah,
I
really.
guess birth counts, right?
Yeah, it counts. Counts.
So I am super excited about this one because a lot of the conversations that I've had on this show, when I look back at this last year, really came from a place, I think, in the beginning of imposter syndrome, a lot of the guilt of being a horrible dad, a horrible husband. And it's crazy because I'm not that person anymore. And I have on the show with me today my son, which is going to be an interesting conversation. He and I have we've been through a lot.
Been
We've
through
been
some
through,
been through some shit, man.
yeah, understatement. It's funny. I'm writing this book right now, my third book, and it's all about psychedelics. And I'm kind of sharing my whole story, and you're laughing. Why are you laughing?
You're about 10 years too late.
Too late for what?
Yeah, so it's just funny for me hearing the stories and because this is all stuff I was doing at 14 when I was leaving the house and you're like, you represent me. And so now I hear about this journey that my dad's going on. And it's just, it's like, well, holy shit, never would have thought in a million years that,
I think there's a
like
little bit of a
like
difference between
my
what
dad.
I think there's a difference between what I was doing and what you were doing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I mean, I want to
So
go. I think it's important for my listeners to kind of go back to the very beginning of all this because for me, I talk very openly about my past. Have an incredible mom and dad. I mean,
yep,
grandma and grandpa are just amazing. My dad has
yep,
always been there. I just kind of even think back when you were little, when mom and I were doing Cub Scouts, and uh, those were all things that my dad did.
probably, yeah,
Grandpa was always there, but I dealt with the pain of being molested. I dealt with growing up with that, but growing up in this Christian home that, while they meant well, was very toxic. God
yep,
was like this crazy overseer guy that was just waiting for you to screw up because he couldn't wait to send you to hell.
yep,
And I remember Grandpa used to say to me, "You represent me." Uh,
yep.
but he never told me who he was, but I did the same thing to you. So, I will talk very openly about this. And your mom
Mm,
is someone that I need to work on. I need to somehow, we collectively, we need to
yep,
figure out how to move forward as civility or just as humans. But
yep.
there's a lot of blame there, a lot of anger, a lot of things that you saw that you probably shouldn't have seen.
There's a
She and I.
lot of shame, a lot of shame too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
wouldn't say for me and you, but I'd say definitely for her. Um, and mom, if you watch this one day, I'm sorry if any of this offends you, but I honestly, I wanted to hate her for so long, and there was this when Sylvia died, and you and mom came up, and for the listeners, my dad's wife, which is my stepmom, it's the woman that raised me. So you'll hear two moms, just for the sake of
uh,
but
it wasn't easy though.
I'd hate to be her. I'd hate to be in my 50s and knowing that I have nothing to show for it. I can't imagine. And I think the
it's
anger is just a mask.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's
So
crazy because I was listening to there's a American Christian author. His name was Dallas Jenkins, and he said God's phone number's at the end of your rope. It's kind of funny, but I mean, go just to go back to the very beginning though. I knew your mom while I was getting ready to go into the Navy, into boot camp. I met her just before I left. I came home from boot camp, and for the listeners, I'm just gonna be very honest and blunt. I had sex with her once, I apologized immediately after. I said, I don't like you like that. And she said, oh, what's the big deal? It's just sex.
Yep.
Sound like your mom? So
Well,
I found out a couple months later at Christmas time that you were coming, and I was in
yep.
the Navy. I had gone back to my ship, and I remember coming back and holding you and writing a letter. And I remember those big blue eyes of yours and holding you and just apologizing and asking that someday I hope you could forgive me. I was in no place to be a dad, being just starting this naval career, being gone. And I remember crying with her in the car. We knew it was the right thing. We found a family for you. They were teachers. You had an older brother. I mean, everything was perfect. And then I went back to my ship and I found out a few weeks later that she couldn't do it, which I was scared, relieved, angry, all of those things.
Confused.
So a lot of it,
Yeah. Yep.
I had shame, I had
And I'd
guilt,
say
I had
from,
because
that day
being
forward, there's a lot of, oh, I don't know what happened.
yeah. So yeah, from the very beginning.
Oh, it froze. Yeah,
Yeah,
that all froze for about 15 seconds. That was
did it.
crazy. Yeah. So, um, yeah, it's, and it's, I'd say even too, as a man that grew up, kind of knowing a lot of this, um, there was definitely a lot of shame and, you know, I don't know really how to put it. I'd say a lot of shame and just
Yeah.
kind of hate, like self-hatred growing
Yep.
up, because I got molested too. And there was, so much going on at my mom's that, I remember, the brief snippets of normal, was coming to be with grandma and grandpa. And, and it's even crazier, hearing stories as an adult and hearing your grandmother tell you, in this picture you were screaming because you didn't want to go back to your mom's. And it's, I
Mhm.
mean, and it's documented, you
Yeah.
know, and it made things really hard. And, I don't think anybody can be ready for it. So
So
it's
I mean,
definitely,
the unfortunate part
definitely a
about all,
sensitive touch subject.
well, it is, yeah, but it's crazy because there are so many people, so many men who have these really horrible relationships with their sons, for a lot of reasons. And I even think about our last name. So our last name, and I don't know if you knew this, our last name came because a woman got pregnant by a guy and he wouldn't marry her. So I mean, from the very beginning, our
It's like
name,
generational.
if he had
It's
been married to
generational.
her, we would be a different name right now. So,
Yep.
but
Yep.
yes, but I mean, I remember like coming home just to pick you up, and she would always hide. She would always hide you wherever you were, and then when you were in Texas and Arizona, having to go pick you up, it was just it was a thing. Like you got to see some ugliness there, but then when
I
she
remember you coming to pick me up and her throwing rocks at you and
spitting
like
at me,
Francesco, like, oh shit face, trying to sneak me into the house so I wouldn't see it, but it was like already too late. And that wasn't anything. I mean, that was like every day, dude. You know.
but I mean, her anger. A lot of it, I mean, she expected me to marry her. And I think at one point I really tried to want to do that. And she was just so angry. She was so angry. But anyway, you were 5 and you were turning 6. I was graduating from college. I had met mom and I was picking you up for a summer visit. And we always knew the plan. We knew the plan was that you were going to someday live with us because I just couldn't see long term. I couldn't see that happening for you with her. And we always knew
Yep.
that. But when I picked you up just before our wedding, and she sat me down and she did the most admirable thing. And I will commend your mom for that because she sat me down and she said, I can't do this anymore. He needs his dad. He needs you. I just can't give him the life that you can. And I mean, it really was the most selfless thing that your mom ever did. And I called mom when I got to the hotel and I said, got a surprise. It's a boy. And she said, what? And I said, yeah, she wants him to come live with us. Now we were in a one-bedroom apartment, just started jobs 3 months before. And
Broke college,
we
basically broke college
we were
students.
broke college. I mean, together we weren't even making 50 grand a year. I mean, it was so funny. So then like we're in this one bedroom apartment at Water Chase Way, and we actually just found pictures of it. It's kind of funny. And um, we moved like within 2 weeks. And we hadn't even got married yet because this was like June, July, and this was October. We were getting married. And we were just excited to finally, it was like anything. It's a challenge, but hey, we're gonna figure this out. We enrolled you into school right away, and that was a struggle because you would miss like 54 days of school and
Didn't even know how to tie my shoes, dude.
did not tie his shoes or ride a bike, and everything was just a struggle. And mom, 21 years old,
Oh my
like
God.
never even never even questioned it. Like this was it. Like this was she was just gonna do this, and she loved me and she loved you and never questioned it.
Man.
So, here we go.
Now
We
it begins, right?
Now here's where it begins. So we find out you're molested. I don't know what to do with that because deep down I hadn't even dealt with my own.
That's
Um,
there you go.
yeah, and I mean
Which,
looking back at it,
oh
I
man.
hid. Like it was a painful thing. And then there were times you were 8 that you wanted to kill yourself. It was Christmas time. We had not heard from your mom because she had moved
I
to
think it was like
Italy.
9. I
Oh
was like
yeah, you're 8,
9.
9. She moved to Italy, and every Christmas, every birthday, you cried, you wanted to die, and we just felt like this. We felt like a struggle, like we couldn't be the family that you wanted us to be because you were angry and you were
Didn't
abandoned.
know how, I mean, I didn't know how to process it,
Yeah. No, it
you
was
know?
trauma. I mean, you had a lot of trauma, and then the abandonment issues, and not really understanding that she didn't do that because she didn't want you or love you. She did it because she wanted the best for you. And that at least that's what we tried to tell you. And I never spoke ill of her. And I told her from the very beginning if she wanted to see you, great. All she had to do was say something. We didn't want any money. We didn't want anything from her. But we never heard from her again. And
Yeah, I think
that
I got like 3 birthday presents in 15 years.
I thought I was doing the right thing. And it wasn't until you were
Like,
older, and I talk about this on my show. I mean, I went out to build a name for myself at
mhm.
yours and mom's expense. And I thought I was doing it for us. I wasn't. I was doing it because of my own narcissistic tendencies, my own fears, everything that went with that. So we get this opportunity to move to Maryland. I don't ask anyone. You had friends. We were building some kind of normalcy. We just built this beautiful dream home that mom and grandpa designed. And we talked it over and we left. And I watched the same pattern in retrospect because grandpa and grandma did this to us. So when they wanted to go to Bible college, we picked up and we moved. And I remember the pain that my grandparents felt. My grandfather used to write grandma letters all the time. I was super close to them, and I never realized I never saw it.
Hmm.
But the more I worked, the more I left you and mom alone, the more
Yep.
isolated mom and I got, which I almost felt like, and I don't know if you ever noticed this, that there were two camps. There were two
Yeah,
camps in
there
our
was.
house. There was the you and I camp because I had all this guilt and shame that, you were going through all of the stuff. And then there was the mom and I camp where she was just like, I want to be a family. You're not allowing me. You're choosing sides. And I refused to believe it.
Hmm.
And so we sent you to Hargrave because we thought that that was going to be the best thing for you. You were arguing with teachers, and then I would be screaming at them, and then I'd find out that it wasn't their fault.
It was me.
It was you.
I was a shithead, dude.
But I
Oh
think,
man.
I mean, from the very beginning, I enabled you out of guilt.
Yeah,
I
I
always
would say
wanted to
so.
believe the best. I didn't want to believe the worst. And I mean, and as you got older, it got harder because You got kicked out of school.
Yep, I did
You came home
twice.
twice. Yes. So then you came home. And I remember you coming to my office at
Um,
principal and I enrolled you into homeschool.
yeah, that
And
didn't work, man. I lived in the city.
yep. So yeah, so we moved from Perry Hall, from the suburbs. Again, we thought living in the
Oh
city was going
nope.
to be really cool. Not once thought about you or what you needed, because we were all about us. And it was almost as if we had two camps. We had family, but you never came with to us. You never came with us to anything. You never did our sports stuff. You thought it was dumb. We would take you to see the Orioles, and you were like, I mean, you just didn't enjoy any of that stuff. So we just were like, okay. So, and like
Yep.
horrible people, we let you raise yourself.
I wouldn't say horrible people. I'd say that in your brokenness, you just didn't know what to do. It's really the way that I would look at it.
Yeah.
As on the other end, I've spent a lot of time since my release from incarceration, really analyzing all of that, and coming to this realization. As pissed off and angry as I was, yeah, I don't know if it was just like this weird lie of, not feeling like you guys ever cared. Like I remember when I'd get texts, the "Are you alive?" texts, and I thought you were being condescending. I genuinely thought that. And that's what's crazy for me, all these years later looking back and realizing like just all the lies of the bullshit that I believe, the bullshit that you believe. And and I just nothing could have prepared, I think, either of you for receiving this broken kid. Because you
But
hadn't dealt with your shit, mom hadn't dealt with her shit. Having a
Mhm.
kid doesn't come with a manual, dude.
Well, and
So
the crazy thing, because again, I'm writing this book, and when Mom and I met, when you're in college, you don't talk about kids or family or what you're.
nope.
I think a lot of people might, but we never had that conversation. So for her to be 22 years old and to jump into this relationship feet first and have this really horrible relationship with her own mom and me
Yep.
just trying to go out and conquer the world at your own at your expense. It was tough. So I remember moving downtown and stuff just started missing. So rather than confront you
Yep.
about it, I did. You always had a lie or an excuse. I always wanted to believe it. So we ended up putting locks on the door. I
Yep.
shared a letter that I wrote with you a couple of years ago, that kind of shared my whole experience. And I remember walking around the corner with the dogs, with Sky Dog and Stante, and Mom screaming at the front door. He took everything. And it was every piece of jewelry, every Mother's Day, every Valentine's, every cruise that we went on, from the Around the Way Cafe Kid. I mean, we had a lot of great memories, and a lot of those memories were gone. And I remember even then making excuses. Well, are you sure we didn't move them? Are you sure we didn't put it somewhere else? And it was a really hard, because even through all of that, I wanted to believe that it wasn't true.
Can I ask like why?
Yeah. For me, I think it was guilt that
Okay.
I drove you to that. You needed a dad. I wasn't there when you needed me. I remember sitting at the dinner table and finding out 6 weeks later that you had your tongue pierced. And what was my response?
Oh, I mean, threatened to rip it out with pliers if I didn't take it out.
I was never a great dad, because I mean,
I remember
I never.
waking up with my ear pierced, man, and like this, and I
Hmm.
felt that pressure, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" So there was always this fear attached to you,
Hmm.
but I'm also your kid, so there was just like this generational seed of rebellion.
Uh,
So, and I took to the extreme. Um,
but it's funny because I look back at myself and I never realized that it was repeating itself. Now I don't know where
Hmm.
Grandpa. I don't know where Grandpa is. Grandpa's never told us anything about him about himself. But I remember just as I've been going through trauma therapy and facilitating this stuff, a lot of like my past has kind of come back. I remember sitting on a hill in seventh grade and wanting to kill myself.
Hmm.
All of the same things that you thought and you talked about, I thought I could will out of you, I guess, because I never put myself in your shoes. I never realized that the same things and same demons that you had were the same ones that I had to hunt down.
You hadn't faced yet.
And I had 2 years, maybe even longer, where mom and I were married in Cricklewood, and you never knew that I would lay in bed, and just wish I was dead. I wanted to
Wow.
die. I thought about killing myself. I never told anyone. It actually kind of came out in a conversation with one of my guests. I think it was like my fourth or fifth episode where he was kissing his wife goodbye, and he said, "Hey, I'll see you later." He was going to the store. The store was falling apart. They were hemorrhaging money. They didn't have anything left, and he had every intentions of killing himself that day. And it was so crazy because we just opened up this conversation. I'm like, yeah, I remember wanting to kill myself. So when it all happened to you, I thought I could be strong enough for both of us to say, hey, because that's stupid. You don't want to talk like that. Instead of just being honest with you and just empathizing and saying, bro, I know where you're coming from. Yeah, the
Mm.
tongue ring, not that big of a deal. Earrings, not that big. In hindsight, I mean, I'm
Yep.
54 and I have tattoos now. Who'd have thought, right?
Yeah. And you're into psychedelics. That's like crazy too. So,
So,
um,
so
yeah.
you go to jail.
First
I
time.
go to bail you out.
Was this when
You're about to,
the task force took me down?
yep.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
called,
that was a
I,
fun day.
I called Detective Gianti. I knew you were coming home. They
Yeah,
were
because
looking.
I had called you to let you know that Liz and I were stopping by before I took her
Mhm.
to her parents.
I called him, and I he called me after they arrested you. I had so much guilt, but I didn't know whether you were going to die or not. You would disappear for weeks on end. You took the Mariner and you lived in it for a year, and you would call me and you would say, "Hey, I got a job. I need new shoes and I need new clothes for the job." And I would give you my credit card and you would charge 300, 500. And then I found out there was no job. And I don't know how many times you did that, but I still believed and I still was like, I
Yeah,
was so excited. And then I got to a point where I just didn't know what to do. So I just stopped
pushed me
chasing,
away. Yeah.
stopped chasing.
Yep.
So I would wait. I'd get up in the middle of the night and I'd be like, you know what? Is today the day he's gonna die? Is this the day I'm gonna get the call? And I was genuinely crying. I mean, there were days I'd look out the window and I would wonder where you were. I'd wonder what was going on and how I could be so bad as a dad that it would drive you to that. And we had this picture perfect life. Like we had stuff and we had success, and none of that means anything. So
It's funny
you,
because I talk about that. Um, so like I have quite a few young guys that I talk to that, like Darby, Darby.
mm,
And I have these other friends that just they ended up in addiction, and then they come from shit lives, and they'll sit there, and one of Darby's things was, and I don't know if I ever told you this, it was shortly after he met you. So, well, I wonder if I wouldn't have became an addict and dealt with so much self-hatred if I had a dad like yours. And I said, I didn't have a dad like that.
nope,
And he's
you
like, what do
didn't.
you mean? And I said, dude, you gotta love people where they're at. Just let it go, dude. Because I said, I had every opportunity. I said, if I would have excelled in my grades, I could have gone to any college. I could have been one of those Wall Street guys. I could have done anything. And I chose the streets. And said, so it just goes to show it doesn't matter where you come from.
But it's
That
kind of amazing
the
though,
the
because
brokenness, man.
God always has a plan.
Yeah, he does. It's kind
So
of
so you go to
crazy.
jail. And I remember
Yep.
you would write me letters. I still have all of your letters, by the way. They're in my filing cabinet in my desk, and I do look at those from time to time as a reminder. Um, I remember picking you up in Virginia. You were getting out of jail and you were laughing like you thought this was like the biggest party. And we went to the diner across the street and you were like, this is the last time, never gonna do this again. And then we did the military thing. And um, I was there, but I wasn't really there. I gave you the help, but I didn't give you my heart. I
Which
felt
was
like
crazy because that was the only thing I wanted.
and mom tells me the same thing. And
The
it's
only thing I
crazy for
wanted.
me because I didn't have one. Um,
Yep.
I found it
Because
last year.
you hadn't dealt with your shit yet.
Yep. So you get out, you accept Jesus into your heart.
Talking about
I
2016.
I don't know what to do with you. So I send you to Teen Challenge. I send you to
Oh,
Michigan. Yeah. I mean this like later you end up at Youth with a Mission. I just didn't want you home. I was afraid that by this time you had a brother and a sister. I was afraid of what would happen if you fell back into old patterns. I didn't trust God because God wasn't really real to me yet. We went to Central Christian, we did all of this stuff, and I knew about God because I went to Bible college, but I didn't experience God.
you knew God from up here, just not down here
Mhm.
yet.
So
Yeah.
you would
Yep.
call and we'd have these biblical conversations and all of this other like fun stuff, but in the reality is I loved you enough that I didn't trust you or God. I mean,
Yep.
that's the
Yep.
reality.
And I knew it. I knew. So 2016 for me, um, I'd gotten arrested, I think in 2 years, over 8 times, and probably more, honestly. Um, I end up on felony probation for original charge from 2014, and I am like strung out. I mean, they're drug testing me on felony probation. I keep dropping dirty. I can't keep clean because I had gotten to this point that I didn't care anymore. And I remember going out into the woods. I'd had another friend die from an overdose, and I went out into the woods with a bottle of Jack, and I got pissed drunk under a tree, and I told God, if you're real, I need you to save me from myself because I'm gonna die like everybody else. And a week later, I'm out partying with my friends, and Grandma calls me. She goes, "Hey, Dave Kuiper, your probation officer, just showed up. You have to turn yourself in on Monday." And if they would have hit me with the resentence on the original charge with the two pending and ran them one right after the other, it would have been a total of 35. And I had a public pretender. So I knew, for the listeners, pardon my language, I knew if I turned myself in, about 95% chance I'm fucked. So
Yeah.
knowing the system. And when she hung up the phone, I heard a voice say, you can keep running or trust me. And it really wigged me out. And I ended up actually having her drive me down to 82 Ionia downtown, handcuff me in front of her. And a week later, I had an encounter with God. And it was the first time in over a decade that I finally felt normal. It was like all the shit that I lived through, like it was all for something. And when I got out and I knew that you were where you were, mentally and emotionally still, I knew you didn't trust me. And I knew that it was going to take me doing my best to try and grow up and earn it. Because it's not, when you bullshit somebody for, your whole damn life, it's going to take more than words to show them that you're different. So I did what I thought I had to do.
Yeah. I know that for mom, I tried to have this conversation with her and she felt so betrayed because of the jewelry and everything else and there was just no way it was going to happen. But I think for her it was a more of a personal she always wanted to be mom and there was this
She felt
ghost.
betrayed.
There was a ghost
Yeah.
that we had, and that was Leslie. I mean, we always felt like we had to compete with that ghost. So I remember taking you back to Christ for the Nations, and I was super excited for you because you'd met this girl, and I was cautiously optimistic because I started to see really cool changes in you. Business was growing for us, but mom and I were still like worlds apart. Like just like there were so many things that were wrong because I was still about me.
Yep.
And we had Harper, your sister, and I remember when you met Harps, and I remember the hardest part was when we found out we were going to have Riker, because we always wanted you to have a sister. We always wanted to be a family. We just always wondered, would that
What it
cause
would
more of
have.
a spiral? Would that, where would you
Yeah.
try to fit in? And that was the like we talked about that for years. Like we so wanted to be a family for you. But
Yep. Yep. I remember
so
even after they were born coming to your house because you and I and mom had not dealt with it yet.
mhm,
And I remember sitting in that bed and crying, dude, because it felt like being in a house with strangers
mhm.
and forcing something that just wasn't there. And it was, I guess for me, and I know it wasn't intentional on either, you or mom's part, but it was just a reminder.
Uh,
And so I don't know how to explain it. Like it just, dude, it hurt. It hurt really bad because it was like it doesn't matter. The lie in my head was it doesn't matter how far you come from that person, they're always going to see you like that.
and I want to get to that. Which is crazy because I have somebody who works for me, and she would come in, and people who listen to my show, my life's an open book. And she would come in and she sat into my office and she'd cry. She was talking about her daughter and just what the perception of the train wreck that she was. And I just stood up and I said, just love her where she's at. If it's the one piece of advice I could give you, just love them where they're at,
Mm.
because that's gonna do more than anything else. But we've kind of talked, you and I I would be on a business trip. You and I would try to call, we try to connect. We'd have a lot of biblical conversations. We hadn't really dealt with anything yet.
Yep.
And we go to a wedding. Like, so you're getting married to this girl,
It's
and
wild, right?
you gosh, she's such a sweetie. I love Cosette.
Yeah.
Um,
My
but
wife's a sweetheart.
but mom tells me, hey, have you talked to your son? And I said, no, because this is kind of how you worked. You go to and it was kind of fun
I
because
told mom, I
once
just
you and
avoided
mom
you.
made up, yeah, once you and mom like kind of made up and you had called and asked for forgiveness about everything and she gave it, you guys talked about the serious stuff. You called me for the very high level. I think you were still afraid of me. Um,
Yep.
I still didn't really let you in a whole lot, but you called mom, and I think that was the first time that I saw this amazing shift. But yet I
Yep.
was still like on the outside looking in. And I remember like walking into the room of the wedding, and first I think being a little hurt that you couldn't tell me, and that because that was the place that we were in. I just discovered Warrior. I think I was in Warrior for like 2 years, still playing low. I was on the outside, still really not taking it serious, still
Hmm.
really not allowing myself to own my shit. And I remember going on a run and stacking and just all of the things that I wanted to say to you that I typed out on a run, and I was crying when I was running, and I just stopped and I said, man, if I could give you any lessons that I wish somebody would have told me, I wish my dad would have told me. I wish my dad would have given me his heart like he did. And I just kind of poured it all out. But when I walked into the room and I saw all of these men with their hands praying over you, it was a different kid than what I had thought. And I think that's when God said, it's over. It's over. This kid is not the same one. And then watching the wedding and then going to the reception and people toasting, mom looked at me and said, hey, you need to give a toast. And I said, this is his wedding. I'm not taking that from him. And she's like, Alan, it's our son. Give a toast.
Hmm.
I don't even remember what I said. I just felt that God had a message for both of us, but we still hadn't dealt with our shit.
You told everybody to quit bringing up the old me because the guy before you was that person was dead.
I
That's
know.
what you
I
said.
remember. It was not anything that I'd planned to say. It was just like God was just like it was just pouring out my heart.
Hmm.
And they were calling you John, and everybody was talking about the past. And it's like that kid, the one I just saw getting prayed for. I don't know who that is, but that other guy, he's gone. Like we gotta stop talking about that guy. But you and I had an encounter
Yeah.
a year
Underst-
later.
Understatement. Oh shit.
So I bring you to Warrior Week. Excuse me, I bring you to Warrior Con 4. I had just really given my heart to God. We started going to this church. I was super excited about it. I just came home from Warrior Week. I was starting to own my truth, and it just still wasn't there. And I remember talking to Sam
I love Sam.
when I was in council, Coach Sam, and he said, "What's your son doing for WarriorCon?" And I said, I don't know. Get him on the phone." So I'm literally in this meeting with Sam. We're calling you, and what did he say to you? Like, you're going to
Oh god.
WarriorCon 4.
Yeah, he just told me he voluntold me. Yeah. Yep.
So I get out my credit card, swipe
I
10
wasn't
grand.
prepared for that.
Either was I.
Oh
This is why I love
god.
Sam.
Yeah,
So
he just kind of puts you on the spot and you're just like, well, guess I'm in it.
so
So
you go,
yep.
and you don't want to go. Like you're like hedging. First it was you didn't have black clothes to wear. Right? So and I could see and I could sense the fear as we're kind of getting closer. Like that like you just like this wasn't gonna be your thing. There's were gonna be a bunch of rich people who because I think the people who went, like they all paid 10 grand to go
They did.
and everybody else had to watch from the screens.
And that was weird for me. Especially like I don't know, I guess, going there and there's like this expectation of like, well, who's this guy that they know, in regards to you? Because I'm like, I only knew you really on like a surface level.
Yep.
So, getting there and like, oh, your dad's this great guy. Like who the hell is that?
Yeah.
Like, so it was awkward for me. Um, and then I got on stage.
So yeah, so let's talk about that. So I am supposed to go that
God.
day and a meeting came up, but God was telling me that it wasn't my time to go and that I needed to go a day later. And I didn't understand. I'm like, okay, like whatever. And I felt bad because I was sticking you with all these people that you didn't know. I was coordinating Sammy and Parker and everyone else to kind of guide you and kind of move you where you needed to go because you had like zero idea what any of this was. I mean, at least people
I
who
get I get out there and Trevor's like, God, what does he say the first day? He's like, shut up and quit talking. This ain't no pussy ass men's group. And I'm like, whoa, dude, like, what am I into right now? And then I find out he's like, dude, he's like a really cool guy, but I'm just like, like, where the hell did my dad just send me?
so I am I'm in a meeting. I'm not able to even join online. I get all these text messages. Dude, your son's on stage. And I'm like, what the hell is he saying? Like, because at that point we hadn't really talked about anything, let alone healing. We just like had some surface stuff. So I was just kind of like, immediately like,
How
what?
how bad is it?
Yeah, like, so like what's going on here? And then I get other text messages like, oh my God, he is fire. He is such an amazing kid. And I'm just like, I have zero idea what's going on. But then you sent me a text and you said, I didn't know men talk like this. I
Yep.
didn't know that men could be open and vulnerable, which was what I was learning to be, but I had not been able to do that with you yet.
Mhm.
So I fly in, you meet me in my hotel room. It was like 1 in the morning. I was exhausted. Like, and we stayed up talking for an hour, and you were just like, I've never seen anything like this. I have no idea what this is. I have no idea who this is. Like, and you just kind of shared everything, and I listened. I didn't even say anything. It
Yep.
wasn't time. So the next day, we're going through these breakouts, and
Uh, and Garrett says, we're going to ask God to help you deal with whatever you haven't dealt with yet. And my heart dropped because I already knew.
what did you know?
Dude, as soon as he said that, all these guys get on their computers and they're like sitting there trying to focus. And I'm like, and I just knew. And I'm just sitting there and I was arguing with God. And, it was, couldn't refute like the people that you were surrounding yourself by, or that you had been changing, but there was like this part of me that wanted to stay angry, and I fought it. And so when we broke out into those small groups. God, who am I with? I'm with Brandon Grant.
BQ
uh
BQ Davis, Brian.
yep. Yep, Q. And then that older guy, I forgot his name, the other pastor. So I ended up in a group
Pastor
with two
Scott, Pastor
pastors.
Scott.
Yeah, end up in a group with two pastors, and they're like, John, why are you crying? And I'm like, God's telling me I have to face my dad. Ryan's like, well, he's right there. Let's go do it. Oh, I'm like, no, because I knew you were going to look at me being emotional and you're just going to shut down. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it
And
was.
you're kind of like this, all like, oh fuck, what now? And which is like, I get it. Um, and yeah, and then a really big collision happened.
So I'm in a group of guys. I'm in council, and it's so amazing how like you think in your mind that you're like this God guy, and then you realize that there's so much ego still behind all of that. And I was trying to let you deal with your shit while at the same time not realizing that we still
Hadn't
really
dealt
from a
with it.
deep level had not dealt with whatever we needed to deal with. And when you came over, so BQ's like, hey, Jonathan wants to talk to him. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, after this breakout. He's like, no, he really needs to talk to you right now. And I said, okay, when we're done with this breakout. And he's like, he's hurting. Will you get your ass outside? So I was just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
what did you say?
Oh man. I couldn't tell you word for word, but
You let it all out. You gave me
it's like
all of
20
your
years of
anger.
rage, bro.
It was beautiful. But I think there was so much that you thought I didn't know,
Yep.
or that I needed to know. And I knew all of it. I looked out the window every day waiting for you to come home, and it never happened.
Yep.
I dealt with that
And
failure.
that's the story though, right? Because there's
100%.
there's two sides. And that's what I think is so interesting. I mean, even about this conversation, because like for me, like, dude, I should be dead,
Yeah.
and I'm not. And there's so many other people that are like literally going through what we went through.
Hmm.
And for the other young men that are pissed off at their dads, I
There's
grow a
so many
pair and tell
dads who
grow
just
grow a pair and tell them how you feel.
same thing with dads. So you pour out your anger, and I mean, it was rage. You raged. It was beautiful. What did I do?
My dad fell to my knees, and dude, you were sobbing. Um, you asked me to forgive you, and you also yelled back. I mean, you gave it to me right back, and that was awesome. Um, because it wasn't like this bullshit anger. I mean, it was real, but it was all from like a place of love and hurt, and I mean, it was chaos, man, but it was awesome. And you're like, you think we didn't know, and I think for me, it was like the first time in my life I felt seen by you, and that was the hardest part for me, is I felt so alone my whole life that, I mean, it took me down roads that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And but the other side of that is, there's so many beautiful relationships that have come out of all of it. And I'd say, like, you and I, we have conversations that most fathers and sons don't have. I had a guy the other day, and he's like, well, what's it like, when you talk to your dad? I'm like, it's like talking to my homie, dude. Like, it's like, that's my dad. I was like, don't get me wrong, I have the utmost respect for him. Like, that's my father. I was like, but that's the homie right there. And he's
So I
wise.
realized, I mean, you were given it to me. I mean, and I had to take it because I deserved it. I earned it, and I
Yep.
remember God just saying, "Take a knee,"
Yep.
and that's all I could
Crazy.
do. I remember crying and just watching your whole life and everything that I didn't do and couldn't do, but then it was over. It was like I can't live in that anymore. I can't. You can't. For us to be
Nope.
able to have any kind of a chance, got to move forward. And then um, I called mom and I said, "Yeah, we just had a massive collision." And she said, "Really? Was it good?" I go, "It was." So it was worth the trip. Just
Yep.
that. And what was crazy and what was so cool about that whole thing is you said to me, "Do you realize what the name of this conference was?
A free man.
And
And what and
why was that so
what
significant?"
what day did it fall on?
You tell me.
It was the 7-year anniversary of my release.
7 years
Yep.
clean.
Yep. Off a dope, which
Yep.
that was like the impossible task. It's funny too, man. Like, looking back, who I am today. Like, I'm this young dad. I've got a really cool job. And I've got this awesome wife, and I was sitting there the other day. Um, it was like after you and I had got off the phone, and I told you about Sunday. And I'm sitting here, I'm holding Lily, I'm looking at Cosette, just hanging out on the couch reading a book. And I'm like, who would have thought? Like, who would
Yeah.
have thought this kid running around Baltimore City without a care in the world, and, you know, playing with death, in and out of jail. I mean, my life should have taken so many different turns, and I ended up here. And I've got, ex-presidents of outlaw motorcycle gangs on my couch asking about Jesus and telling me their story.
So let's talk about that. So, you and I have this like we have this amazing connection. We restore our relationship. I remember hugging you and it was reminding me of the prodigal son. And I held you and I
Yep.
remember God saying, imagine how your dad feels because I had ran from my dad. I left when I
Yep.
was 20, went into the Navy. I never looked back. And I remember calling grandpa and apologizing and telling him how much I loved him, but yet still hadn't really made that much of an effort to be
Mm,
part of anyone else's life. Mom and I were still, it was still about me. It very much was. Now I'm more connected. I've forgiven. You and I have moved on and reestablished our relationship, but I had not healed my relationship with mom the way that I needed to. So we go on this journey, and I remember calling you and you sending me all of these pieces of research and documentation about how horrible it was.
I was so scared because,
And
dude, I already did all this stuff like years ago, and so I'm like, you're like, yeah, I'm about to go like get induced on a psychedelic journey in Nashville with your mom, and I'm like, wait, like,
yeah,
what? What'd you say?
but
And
what was so beautiful about that, I talk about this a lot, and I think it's why I'm so passionate about the facilitation and the therapy behind it, is that I remember going in and I remember reliving my abuse. And I remember like feeling the tap on my shoulder. I remember going back upstairs to the room.
mm,
I remember smelling the room, seeing the room, feeling the room. I think relived it 3 times in my experience. And then the last time he was actually sitting on the edge of the bed crying, telling me that it was actually done to him. And then I forgave him in that journey. And then I saw this fight with grandma and grandpa. I was 4. I don't even remember where that house is, but I remember where the room was. I remember what the window looked like, or everything. I mean, I saw the
yeah,
sheets. I saw grandpa come in and cry, and I asked him why he had put that on me at 4 years old. I I saw a
mm,
fight with mom and I in the very beginning of our marriage. I threw a pillow at her, and I asked her, I guess this is where you're sleeping tonight. And we were fighting about money because we didn't have any. And there were so many other beautiful parts of the story. I remember the new house that we were building. There was like this beam right here in our great room, and it says Wiederhold on it. And it was just like I remember seeing it. Then remember seeing there's a part where mom and I were dancing in the great room, and everyone was watching, but then we're outside. It's you and Cosette and Lily and your brother and sister. We're all out there, and mom and I were walking hand in hand with Lily. And I remember looking down and having her look at me and say, "Grandpa." And I remember in the journey just saying, "I want to be the son that I want to be the dad that you need me to be, Jonathan. I want to be the son that my dad needed, but I want to be the grandfather that Lily did." But I found my heart, which was so weird. It was actually laying on a dirt road. And I remember saying in the journey, "There's my heart. I haven't seen you in such a long time. So I'm living this abuse."
mm.
And I say to him, "You took everything that I ever thought about love and you made it dirty. You took every kiss that I'd ever had and stole every kiss after that." And then I hear mom in the other room in my journey, in my psychedelic experience, which was like totally freaking crazy. But when we came back together, I shared all of this with her. And I'm like, man, God is good. Like, who would have thought we'd find God in the middle of plant medicine? But
Yeah, really.
it's
Yeah,
so cool though,
it's awesome.
because we're both in a place where we're moving where we didn't think God wanted us. I mean, this show, I never thought this show would happen because, like, the question that Garrett asked was, what does freedom look like? And
Yep.
I never really understood what freedom was. I never understood how that could work in the family. I see you and I see how proud I am of you and the conversations and where God is moving you. So what's going on with you right now? Like the conversations we just had this
So
weekend.
yeah, um, so when I moved back to Michigan, so I came out here with like no plan, 400 bucks in my pocket, and had gotten a ticket on Priceline for like 69 bucks. And week later I made it on the news. That was like a couple years ago. So God told me I was going to do barbecue, and I I don't do barbecue at this point. So
You did a
like
lot of Starbucks growing up, but never barbecue.
I was making barbecue sauces in my in-laws kitchen and hustling them at biker bars, and I just felt this weird calling to come back, and I knew it was God because like I hated Grand Rapids. So I come up here, I end up at Flanagan's, and that in and of itself is God's sense of humor because that used to be like the dope bar back in the day. It's where you'd go and you'd go slang or you'd go pick up, and so it's like it's like God. It's a whole 180. I end up hustling barbecue for this bar, and they tell my story on Fox News, and I get all these people coming out of the woodwork and like, holy crap, you do barbecue, you believe in God, you're not on drugs anymore. I'm like, no, and that was kind of where I think the light bulb moment for me with what I'm doing now. That was like where the seed of it was planted, that I realized that I can use food to connect with people, especially if I like fine tune it. And
I'm laughing. You're using food. I'm using drugs. Got it.
yeah, it's like again a whole 180, right? So um I've seen God like do crazy shit with barbecue. That's like and so I do the first art prize that I did a couple years ago for the owners of Flanagan's, and I go back home, I get married, I bring Cosette up here for our honeymoon, we go up to the Upper Peninsula. She's like, I want to move there. I'm like, not a chance. And really felt like God said, I want you to go broke for a year. And it was the hardest year that her and I have ever been through. And I can't get a job because I'm a felon and I've got multiple violent crimes on my record, and people just don't they don't care. They don't care if
And
you
I
change.
remember that. I remember you looking for jobs and calling me just devastated. Like you'd get to like the second interview, they're like, "Yeah, man, I'm really excited." Then they'd run your background, and you're like, "Ooh."
I made it 30 days at shit, what was it called? Some logistics company in El Paso. And I mean, like 30 days as a high-low driver, great performance, great attendance. I'm there 15 minutes early every day. And two guys in suits come onto the floor and escort me off the property. And that was when, um, the whole reality of, this is like, I want to go back to barbecue. And that's kind of where a lot of this all happened. I remember screaming at God, and I'm just like, you promised me my life would be different. And, so go broke for a year, end up working with this guy, Jesus. He owns Rolling Smoke Barbecue. I wasn't there long, but I learned all the ins and outs of what it looked like to do this on a commercial level. And he taught me how to run 1,000-gallon smoker, like 5 of them. And so towards the end of that year, start kind of feeling released to pursue this. And I realized I don't have any money. I'm like, dude, I have no money. I have no smoker. I have no business experience. Like, I know how to hustle. And this guy reaches out to me in a Facebook group, and he's like, hey, I've got this 1,000-gallon smoker. I want $4,000 for it. I look at it, that's this it was good for what it was. It was like the shitty fabric. It wasn't like if grandpa made it.
Right. That thing's a beast.
So yeah, it's right here. So there's the
Oh
one
yeah.
grandpa made. So my brother-in-law gives me 12 grand and says, go pursue your dream. And
Hmm.
I look at my wife and I said, I guess I'm doing this. And she's pregnant. And it was the hardest thing for me. I looked at my best friend from college, Josh Smith. Josh, if you ever see this, I miss you, bro. That relationship did not end well. And me and Josh get in his Nissan and we drive to
Alabama.
Coleman, Alabama.
I remember you
I
called me.
mean,
You were like, "We're gonna
we're
buy this
driving through the
smoker," and I'm
deep
like,
south.
"What?" Yeah.
Yeah. And pulled up in Birmingham. I end up in the hood trying to get a box truck. And I'm like, dude, I'm in like the ghetto in cowboy boots, cowboy hat, like totally look like I don't belong. And, but this guy's looking at me and he's like, you're not nervous. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, did you grow up around black people? I was like, yeah, dude. I said, I didn't used to look like a cowboy. I said, I grew up in Baltimore. And I told him my story, and a guy got saved in FedEx. And, he's like, if I'm ever in Michigan, I'll look you up. And so we come up here, and it was like a year and a half of resistance with the smoker. I mean, being away from my wife, she's pregnant. I mean, I missed most of the pregnancy. I'm up here living at my grandparents again, hustling every weekend with a smoker downtown, trying to make a name for myself. And I mean, almost a year went by and it wouldn't work. And then my grandma passes away, and God makes me deal with facing my mom. And it was like everything happened all at once. Um, like I faced my mom, you come up here, that I'm still working, and God just provides a house, and grandpa gets to work on my smoker. And so now I've got the largest reverse flow in the state, and it's on a giant boat trailer. And I'm a dad. And 2 weeks ago, God kind of reminded me. He's like, hey, you have a way of connecting with people, and essentially, God's like, I gave you a gift, don't waste it, and tells Cosette and I to start a house church.
I saw your Instagram.
And
I saw your Instagram feed because you didn't tell me any of this. I'm like, oh man, Bibles and
yeah,
barbecue. I love it.
yeah, yeah. So I put out, and I've got quite a few people that follow me, dude. And I put out, hey, we're doing this. And I mean, I'm telling people about it like weeks in advance. Nobody's showing up. And then Uncle's youngest son, Connor, shows up, meets Lily and Cosette. And, you know, we've had zero relationships since Uncle went to prison. And, right as he's leaving, I go, hey, can I pray for anything for you? And his response just blew me away. And he's like, yeah, pray that, we actually build a relationship. I'm like, wow, you know. And then these people show up at my house, and it's this guy Frank, this woman Candace, his girlfriend, and then they leave and they go get this guy who goes by Smoke. And the guy shows up with a federal like ankle tether on his bracelet,
I
and and it's
remember
like
you
for me.
texted me that. And I started laughing. I'm like, oh, it's your kind of people.
Yeah, so and I kind of giggle because like this guy comes in, he's covered, I mean literally head to toe from tattoos. I'm not the least bit uncomfortable. um Frank's like, yeah, he was the president of like a one percenter motorcycle club. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's think like biker gang. And he was like the guy. So he gets into sharing his story. Son went away for 40 to 62 years for murder. He spent 21 years inside, found God 6 months ago, and quit an 18-year addiction, and ends up on my couch. And I just laugh because I told God, these are my people. These are the people that I want to be used to love on. And so then we start swapping stories and names, and find out that we know a lot of the same people. And that's what just kind of blew me away, of just like, one, how small the world is, but just like how crazy God's plan is, that that I guess he's refined me to a point where, now, he can send people to my home, and I'm at this point in my life where I can pour into them, and I can show them what a dad looks like, what a husband looks like, and kind of do what you're doing, just with really broken men.
Which is kind of interesting because they might be different socioeconomic level, I guess you could say. They're
Yep.
equally broke, equally
Oh yeah,
broke.
they're all the same.
One thing I learned
So
about addiction is it doesn't matter who you are.
nope.
It doesn't care how much money, how little money you have. It doesn't matter. The other thing I think I've learned is that when you and I had our altercation in Vegas and I took a knee, we ended the generational curse.
Yep.
It was so crazy because I look back at all of it and I remember just, again, we talked about that prodigal son thing and I felt like this is it. And then I thought about how many other families, because you and I have had this conversation, I see somehow sometime in the future sharing our story uh in churches or so. I keep seeing these.
I've seen it too. Um,
Yep.
so God showed me that at some point I'm going to be traveling across the country with
Yep.
this smoker, and having a team of guys like the man that was on my couch, and just having a space for them to hear all the stories, not
Yeah.
just ours, but just all the things that God has delivered people from. Because I don't think the church is very focused on any of that anymore.
No, and what's so crazy about that, so I'm friends with three pastors of three big churches in this area. And the biggest problem that churches have today is that the men aren't taking leadership roles in their families. So the
Nope.
families who are really going to church are led by moms. And it's not working. I mean, until you take responsibility for your home. And I remember like going back to church and telling your brother and sister, "Hey, we're going to church." I would drive by three times, and God's like, "Go in." I'm like, "Nope, go in. Nope, go in." Oh, okay. So, and God's always like, "Why do I have to tell you things three times? You're gonna end up doing it. Just can you just do it and save us all this time?"
Yeah.
So I remember going and raising my hand and mom saying, you raised your hand. What does that mean? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I have zero idea. And then a couple months later, mom raised her hand and gave her life back to God. And we were driving home and I said, "So you raised your hand and then you want to talk about anything happened today?" And I prayed for her in the driveway. That was the very first time I'd
Mm,
ever led our home in all the years that you grew up.
yep.
The first time I'd actually ever led our home with a God Christ foundation and a non-judging. And that's I think what I've learned about God is one, he's got a ridiculous sense of humor. And two, um, he's bigger than the container we put him in. I mean, just so much bigger.
Which is really eye-opening. Like when you really establish, like when you get away from the religion part
Mhm.
and get more hyper focused on the religious part, it really shows you how broken people are
Yeah,
on all sides.
they're searching, man. Everyone's searching, and I think that's where um, as I'm writing this book right now, one of the things that I found is that, I left a lot of things at the cross, but there were so many things in my subconscious that I wasn't aware of, things that were going on for me that I just couldn't heal,
Mm,
that I got to do in plant medicine. Now, am I endorsing it for everybody? No, because I think there's parameters and things around it. But I think what it does is it strips away the entire ego when you do it correctly. And I've watched men come out of these experiences and just say to me, I figured out what was wrong in my marriage. It was something that happened 5 years ago that I didn't even realize. it was this like thing, and oh my God, and other one who I finally see why I cheated. And then you get into these conversations, and then you can let God heal that.
Mm,
So it's kind of an interesting kind of path that we're both on. We're
yep.
both reaching and connecting men to God.
Just
Definitely
different levels.
definitely different levels. But the same thing is you and I mean, I never believed in a million years that I could love and be so proud of you like I am because I love myself.
Mm,
And I would never loved myself.
yeah, it's crazy. So Lily's birth was like super emotional for me. Um, and that was my moment of like realizing, purpose.
Mm,
And I realized that, I now have an opportunity to guide a life with all the lessons I've learned without ever having to experience any of it and do it the right way. Like having that relationship with her, and I'm already seeing it. Um, like, dude, she's a daddy's girl, and it's incredible to see. It's incredible to see the personality, even at just a year old.
mm,
Um, and realizing for me, I think what's really been hard about it, but so redeeming, is just realizing how broken my mom was, when I was that age, of seeing like of what was imprinted on me at Lily's age, and then
mm,
realizing like the generational curse really is gone because she's not growing up with that. She's not neglected. Like she's so loved. And I never in a million years imagined that I would know how to love and feel love like this, and have the patience that I do.
mm.
It's kind of mind-boggling, but it gives me a greater understanding into you too. Because we talked about it earlier. You're like you just didn't want to see everything I was doing wrong, and it never made sense. It's like, well, dude, you know how do you just keep ignoring it? And I finally get it because I look at Lily and it's like I understand. Like there's nothing I wouldn't do for her. It's like it's all just it all comes back around to itself, and you realize a lot.
Yeah. I remember, so your sister broke her wrist a couple weeks ago, and I remember taking her to surgery and having her go under the medicine for anesthesia, and then getting ready to wheel her back, and I'm just like I'm bawling my eyes out. And I remember walking out of there just in tears, and God saying to me, "This is how it feels for me when you walk away. This
Yep.
is how you know how you feel. Imagine how I feel." And I was just like,
Yep.
"Oh man,
Yeah.
like."
Gives you a totally different understanding of God if you
Mhm.
really allow it to, if you allow yourself to see it. And I think
Yep.
that's the other side for me is, you know, um, I don't know. I kind of feel called to bring it up. But did Mom ever tell you what Cosette and I went and tried to go handle over Christmas?
Mm-mm.
So I drove to Liz's parents' house.
What? I never knew
Yeah,
this. Oh my, why didn't you tell me this?
yeah. I was like so scared to tell. I was like, dude, he's gonna be pissed. I
Why?
took
Oh
the
my
Audi.
God, that's
So we drove over there, and it was, dude, like this was for me. This was like the epitome of like facing your shit. So dude,
yeah.
I have a 10-year-old I've never met, and I know him, like, dude, I know I'm a wonderful guy, um, especially in this broken world. And I don't say that to sound like a cocky douchebag. It's just, dude, I've lived a lot of life for 33.
Oh my
So
God. So I've never heard
so
this.
like, dude, so I go out to go shopping, and I knew the night before, like, dude, God told me clear as day, like, you're gonna drive over there. You need to write out a letter, get a gift, and you need to go face this. And so I looked at Cosette And I'm like, hey, so it's time. She's like, what do you mean? And I said, I can't go another year without at least trying, like to face
Wow.
it and have that conversation. And it was funny because I remember praying and I asked God, I was like, please don't let her be there. Like, let it just be Luke and Barb, like her parents. Because, as much as I need to have a conversation with her face to face, like you and my mom do, it ain't time.
Mm.
So we get there and like, dude, I am shaking. Like we get into those back roads up in Pilesville, and dude, I've never been this nervous. And I'm kind of giggling at myself. She's like, are you okay? And I said, dude, like I've been taken down by task forces and I wasn't this fucking scared.
Wow. I was like, I'm blown
like,
away. Like,
dude, like I'm like holding the wheel, just
okay, so now what
shaking.
happens? Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna do like the little bitch thing. I'm gonna leave the bag in front of the garage door. I'm gonna run back to the car because it's like, dude, it's Christmas Eve. So like I fully expected
Holy
like
cow.
knocking on this door and the whole family is there and I'm either about to like receive the beating of a lifetime or have the like there's so many things going in my head.
You were gonna get a Grandpa Walter in the
Oh
driveway.
my God, dude. Like,
I
and
was like, when he tried to beat me up, like,
so
really? No, you don't want
dude,
to do
I
that.
I get I get to the I get to the garage door and I look back, I see Cosette sitting in the front seat and I hear clear as day, you're gonna go knock on that door. And my heart sinks, dude. I'm like, what? And he's like, 10 years, you're not even gonna knock on the door. What are you so scared of? And I'm like, oh. So like, dude, I kind of like, I pull one of these and I take a deep breath. I pick up the bag and I go and I knock on the door and nobody's answering. And God's like, knock again. I'm like, fuck, man. And I'm like, come on, nobody's like, like having this whole conversation in my head. Like, fuck, man, like I don't want to knock on the door again. He's like, knock again. So I did, and it opens. Like I hear the German Shepherd that I knew when I dated Liz like barking. I'm like, holy shit, the dog's still alive. Like, and I hear the
Wow.
door open. I hear the door open, and I'm like fully expecting to get screamed at. And I just hear this soft voice. Well, there's a face I haven't seen in a long time. And I was like, all my anxiety completely disarmed. And it's Barb, it's Liz's mom. And I just break, dude. I took one look at her and dude, I broke. And I said, I am so sorry to just show up. I said, I'm in town. My dad just moved like 30 minutes away from you guys, and I couldn't wait another year without at least coming and having a conversation with you. And they invite me into the home, Luke and Barb, and we sat down and we had a conversation. And I said, I am so sorry for all of the damage that I caused your family. And I want to thank you for picking up my slack and failing, to be there for Braylon. And I said, I wanted you to see me for who I am today and not who I was. And I want you to know that I'm a different person. And they tell me that they've been stalking me on social media. And Luke's like, I see you're doing barbecue and you're doing really well. You're married, and they're like, well, where's your wife and daughter? And I said, they're out in your driveway. And she's like, well, can we go meet them? And I'm like, what? So they come out and they meet Cosette and Lily, and Luke shakes my hand and said, we forgive you and we're very proud of you. And he said that he was going to try and smooth things over with Liz. And I knew all hell was going to break loose. Like, I just knew it. Like, I got in the car and I was like, I give it by the end of the day, get a phone call. And on the way back to your house, I get this call, and it's a 410 number. And I'm like, this is gonna go one or two ways. Like I just know. And it's her brother. It's Liz's brother. He's like, is this John? And I'm like, yep. And he's like, you're a fucking piece of shit. I mean, just goes off, dude. And it's like, I mean, I get it. It's like 10 years of anger. And
Mm.
I mean, he's just going on and on. And I was like, so did you call me to have a conversation or did you just call me to yell? And he's like, I called to yell at you. It's like, all right. And so I just took it and kind of ended it with, I was like, can I ask you a question? Because he's like, what gives you the right after 10 years? What gives you the right to show up? And I said, can I ask you a couple questions? He's like, sure. And I said, can you honestly sit here, and tell me that you're the same person you were 10 years ago? I was like, because if you are, then like, bro, you haven't learned shit with your life.
Yeah.
So, and he's like, well, fuck you. We all know you're a scumbag. And I'm like, okay. I said, do you believe in God? And he's like, F God, F you. And he hangs up on me. And
Wow.
I'm like, well,
Clearly
well,
doesn't know God.
and Cosette's like, you know, that's the example Braylon has. And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's horrible, right? And so I'm sitting on the couch with you and grandma, grandpa, and the kids, and Cosette's upstairs with Lily, and my phone goes off. And it's a blocked number. So I already knew who it was. And I go to your gym and, I have a conversation. And, she's like, how dare you show up to my parents' house? And she's like, if you wanted to see her or have a conversation with me, you could have just found me. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to know where you live? Like, my number's been blocked on and off for 10 years. Last I knew, you were living with your parents. Like, I'm just trying to do the right thing. And she just goes off. I mean, she's bringing up the past. I mean, threatens me. She's like, so I hear you have a little girl. And I go, yeah. And she goes, well, do you know what I could do to you? And I'm like, no, but I'm sure you'll enlighten me. And she's like, I could hit you with 10 years back child support. And I know you're broke. So that little girl would never see her daddy either. And I'm like, are you this like 10 years later
Wow.
and you're this angry? I'm like, you're this mad. And I said, I'm really like, I feel sorry for you, man. I said, I just wanted to do the right thing. And, I said, for as bitter as you are, I said, let me ask you a question. She goes, what? I said, why are you so mad? I said, what kind of parents would we have been? I said, you at least had your mom and dad. I said, I was me. I said, I didn't have a relationship with either of my parents. I was running around with gangs. I was dealing drugs. I was an addict. What kind of father would I have been? She couldn't answer it. And, I just said, I'm really sorry that this went the way that it did. I just wanted to do the right thing, man. And she told me to go fuck myself and hung up on me. But,
Wow.
and, and Cosette just, it really did it hurt. It really hurt because it took everything I had to go and show up because
I
I
wish
deserved it.
I
I
wish you would have
deserved
told
the
me.
screaming. I deserved the screaming. So,
So I wish you had told me because I could have been there for you, but no, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve it.
um,
If it's one thing that as I listen to this, I'm reliving this.
because like, dude, she was there when that test, like when you made the call and I'm sitting in the Mariner on a one-way street. And I see a minivan facing the wrong way, and I knew the shit that I was involved in. And so, like, the first two things in my head are, well, this is either like this is the cops or this is I'm gonna get shot. And six dudes hopped out of a minivan with like strapped to the teeth pointing a barrel of an AR at me. He says, "Get your ass on the ground right now."
Yeah.
And he put the barrel to my head and he said, "Please just move." And I'm like, "I'm good, bro." And it was right in front of her. And so for me, it's, dude, I remember all the things that we went through. It was the most toxic relationship I've ever had. I mean, no business being with her. And
I was
I just
you're
want the best for her, dude. I'm like, I want you to find somebody that's gonna love you, and I want you to like get your shit together, like me.
but it's eerily, you know what, it's crazy. It's eerily sounds like your mom.
No, that's what I told Cosette. I said, it's like, dude, I literally have relived history through my father's shoes.
You
Quite
did.
literally.
But I used to say that it was my fault. And I will take some responsibility. Um, I I I would antagonize her because she was just so mean. And we played games. Like Uncle Devin came out to Arizona to deliver a letter, and there was no stamp, and the mail lady was actually putting the mail in the apartment, and he slipped it into the mailbox, and she freaked
Like
out because there
like
was no
Betty's Devin?
yeah. So he was like, he dropped the
No
letter
way.
off. So there was no return address, there was no stamp, and
So
she's
she
like,
freaked out
she freaked out
because
because she thought like we
they
were
found her.
stalking. It just happened to be dumb luck. But we played little games like that, which was totally uncool.
Which I never did. I never did any of
Yeah.
that. I respected her, and that
Well,
was kind of one of the things I
We had
told
this
her. I was
conversation,
like,
you and I, for a long time because you have wanted to go down that road, and I said to you, you had nothing to offer her. You were not going to be an example at that time. You were still doing the things you were doing. So this is not a new for anybody who's listening, and hopefully Liz's mom and
it's not a
dad.
new subject.
Yeah, hopefully she listens. This has not been a new subject for 10 years. You have wanted this relationship for a long time. I have
Oh,
told you my personal thoughts. You didn't have anything to offer her. I think it's amazing. I mean, if that's what you wanted, and if somehow that worked out, she would have somebody her own age that would be her family, and we would welcome that 100%. So, I mean,
yeah. So the last thing I received was from Luke and Barb at 9:12 p.m. Christmas Eve. Uh, Please don't contact Liz or bring anything about today up again. It has caused a giant chasm in our relationship with our daughter. And I just
well,
and they said, please don't put us in the middle again. Thank you. And for me, I was just like, wow, bro. Like, how does it feel to be them? Was like honestly my first thought of
yeah.
seeing, because like this wasn't a secret for them. I mean, they knew who I was at my worst.
But
And
it was the same as saying, I think, for Walton still. I think they had this image of me that wasn't necessarily true.
yep.
And when you came to live with us, that was the first thing that they thought I
Well,
was
yeah,
going to
because
keep
Sylvia
you.
thought that you were gonna keep me from her,
Yeah. And I told them
which
from the
just
very
wasn't
beginning.
true.
Yeah, I said that from the very beginning. I said I want him to have as much love and family that he possibly could. So I think in time, God will restore this.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, it's like, yeah, it has to, because I mean,
yeah,
at some point she's gonna be 16. Social media is the thing. She's gonna
yeah,
see. It's not like I'm not gonna be on there. It's not like you're not gonna be there. She's gonna wonder who we are, and I've said that forever. Like,
yeah.
at some point, I'm gonna get a message. Hey, I'm your kid. and
Wow.
and I can't wait. Honestly, it's gonna be cool. And be
Yeah.
like, well, I don't know what you've heard. Some of it might be true, but
Probably a
let me
lot of
show you.
it.
Let me show you who your dad is. It's all good.
Dude, I love that.
So, it is what it is. And I think for me, that was a big moment of finally getting to just let go and move on with my life. Like that was like, two biggest things I held on to at the end of my addiction was knowing that I had a kid out there and facing my mom. And God dealt with like literally all of it in the span of a year. So
And
there's
I
like
think
no more excuses.
I think the beautiful thing about all of that too is that we had just built this new house. This was the house I saw Lily walking with mom and I, and it was a great holiday. It was a house that became a home. Um, she's so sweet.
Yeah, it's
That's
awesome, man.
that's a gorgeous little girl.
Who, Lily?
Yeah. But I
She,
mean, yeah, so here we are 33 years later, still trying to figure out this thing we
33
call
this
life.
July, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm
It's
proud of you.
nuts. I love you.
I'm proud of you. I'm very proud of you.
Proud of you too. It's
So
it's been a wild ride.
yeah, it's been a while, but I think for me the biggest takeaways for any dad that's out there who's listening, and I remember when I was creating the show, I know how those dads feel. You feel like it was your fault, that your kids do what they do, and all you can do is love them. All you can do is accept them and just be there for them and not judge. I think the problem that we have in society today is that everyone is so focused on judging. You represent me. That's like the stupidest thing. And I think I hated it when my dad said it to me. I'm like, why would you repeat what you
I
hate?
hated it.
Yeah.
Oh God, bro. I hated it.
I love your piercings, your tattoo. Actually, it's kind of funny because I have tattoos too.
Yeah.
But yeah, who would have thought, right?
Yeah, I was laughing like George. I talked to George and kind of filled him on some stuff, and he's like, "Wait, your dad's sleeved out?" And I go, "Oh, it's like that ain't shit." And just kind of filled him in on some stuff, and he's like, "Mr. Allen?" It's like, "Yeah, dude." It's like, "Dad's cool."
Yeah, dad was definitely not cool. Dad had no joy. Dad
None,
had no joy.
none. Oh my
None.
God. And
So,
it's funny for me is seeing my brother and sister, and I'm just like, dude, you guys are blessed. You have no idea. No, that just like I saw Riker with his mohawk, and I was like, yeah, that wouldn't have flown with me.
which is why I think,
That's why I saw your Facebook post too, because you mentioned it. You're like, with my
yeah.
first one.
So I think I learned so much from you on how to be a great dad, and I'm going to be a really great grandfather. Especially now,
Oh,
so
I learned I learned from you too. It's
I have an
cool.
airplane, I can fly there. But
Yeah.
you taught me so much about my potential of who I could be when I just let my heart lead. And
Yep.
again, I think that's if men would just lead with their hearts and stop thinking with their heads just how beautiful this world would be.
Totally agree. I think the
So
big
as I
thing is I
ask
think a lot of
everybody on my show, what does freedom look like?
you asking me.
Mhm.
Oh man. Um, it's funny because I still don't think I have the answer to that question because for me, I just want to see my kids live the best life that they can. And I don't know, I have this weird image me just as like this super old man sitting in a chair and just seeing my legacy and seeing like, I guess just what's passed down to my kids. And I guess just seeing the fruits of like all the generational stuff finally being broken, like being an old man and seeing, generation after generation of just nothing that you and I ever experienced.
Hmm.
So like financial stability, not a poverty mindset, but also not corrupted. So I believe I'll create generational wealth as well, like you. Um, but I don't want my kids to grow up not being thankful for what they have or knowing how much worse it could be. So I guess that's what freedom looks like for me.
Beautiful. I remember, I think I told you this. I was meditating in Dana Point last year, and I saw my death date,
Mm-hmm.
and you were holding my hand on my left. Mom was holding my hand on my right, and your brother and sister were touching my leg. And mom said it was okay to go, and she thanked me. And as you were holding my hand, you said to me, "Thank you. Thank you for being my dad and being my friend." And I
Yep.
think I think that's when it all kind of became real for me of the importance of legacy.
Yep.
I got this gigantic Wiederhold on a beam in our great room, and that means something. That name
Yep.
means something.
We have a big W in our living room, and it's like it's kind of crazy. Just I guess for me of getting to see what happens when you say yes to God, because you have no idea really how wild it can get. Um, 12 years ago, I was shooting up, putting needles in my arm, and 12 years later, I'm a dad. Got my shit together. It's like, dude, it's wild, wild. I've got a buddy of mine that goes into the jail every week, and he's the guy I get my wood from. And he was the one that kind of just that God used to facilitate, my life changing. And we've stayed friends all this time. And it's, I told him the other day, I said, it's just wild. He's like, what? I said, every time I pull into your driveway and I'm walking into your barn, you're not home, you're in Florida, and you know, I have this trust, that I've earned with people, and just seeing how different it is now. And Cosette and Grandpa teased me, and I called up the fire chief a week ago. I had a bunch of pulled pork left over from that weekend's cook, and I was like, I want to give it to the firefighters. And the fire chief gave me the security code to the door to the fire station. And my wife's like, how many felons do you know they get the key to the door code for the
Yeah.
fire station? And it's just, dude, it's wild. It's God. And and that's if there's anybody that's going to be listening to this that's an addict, like, dude, you have no idea how different your life could look. Not a clue. I thought I was going to be dead 13 years ago.
So I
So, but God, man, it's nuts. He can restore any relationship, no matter how broken.
100%.
Yep.
Us.
So
I'm so
I
glad that we did this
love
tonight,
you.
finally. I love you
Yep.
more than you'll ever know, my man. I love you so much.
Love you too, Dad. So I'm gonna go hang out with my wife, give Mom a kiss.
I will. This is Alan Wiederhold. This is The Cost of Doing Nothing. Thank you.